Ladies and gentlemen, we have Dr. Barry here is going to talk to us about inflammation. Dr. Barry is a naturopathic doctor, and I'll just let you go from there.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
So thanks so much for having me here. I want to just apologize that we don't have the PowerPoint capabilities right now. Technology, that's just the way it is. So you do have the slides in front of you. There are a couple that you don't have, not a big deal. I'll try to describe them as best I can, if it will help. So as Christine said, my name is Dr. Barry, Dr. Theolinda Barry, and I'm a doctor of naturopathic medicine, so I'm an ND. What that means is, well, has anybody heard of naturopathic medicine? Few people? Oh, great, great. Can anybody spell naturopathic medicine? That's the big question. Naturopathic medicine, in a nutshell, I just want to give you a little bit of background so you know where I'm coming from with this talk on inflammation, because it's such a big deal, especially these days. It's becoming so much more prevalent and well researched. So naturopathic medicine it's a system of healing that really focuses on the prevention of illness, which is a great thing, prevention of illness, but also on the restoration of health and on the the maintenance of health. So if you are sick, we like to get you better. We'd like to prevent it first and help you not to get sick. But we'd like to restore you to health as quickly as possible using natural therapies. So that's it in a nutshell. System of healing, prevention, restoration, and maintenance of health using natural therapies. So what does that actually mean? So when we talk about natural therapies, we're thinking of things that are drugless, quote, drugless. So anything that's really in nature as much as possible. So using diet or food. Diet is a four-letter word. Well, food is too, but I don't, and it's an F word too. But diet I don't like to use too much. I like to call it nutrition. So we like to look at nutritional needs and deficiencies as well as needs. So using nutrition, using hydrotherapy, which is using water in different forms, whether it's using an onion poultice on your chest, or whether it's using a nasal lavage, to irrigate your sinus passages and things like that. Even using a cold shower or a hot shower. So that's hydrotherapy, or using nutritional supplements, vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and things like that. And herbal medicine, using different plants in different forms, and also homeopathic remedies. Too much to go into now on the homeopathic remedies, but you probably might be aware of the kind of things that go under your tongue, the little pellets that go under your tongue. Some of you may have seen that kind of thing. We may get a chance to talk about that, but that's a whole nother lecture at some time. But so those are all just the different natural therapies that we try to use to avoid things like surgery and more perhaps caustic or toxic drugs if we don't have to. So that's naturopathic medicine in its as we use it. But what it is based on is a philosophy. A little bit different from conventional medicine, and I just want a little disclaimer here. This is not to bash conventional medicine. We certainly can use conventional medicine when we need it. Emergency surgeries, of course, emergency situations. There's all kinds of times that we need. Sometimes you need a medication to bring your blood pressure down, bring your blood sugar down, or whatever if there's an emergency situation. But we try to first do no harm. So the philosophy of naturopathic medicine is really to treat the whole person. So it's focused on prevention, but it's treating the whole person, not just a symptom. So we don't want to just look at, oh, I've got a headache. All right, here's an herb instead of a drug to treat that headache. We want to see what's going on with the person that's causing that headache. Is there something underlying? So we want to find the underlying cause as much as we can, as much as we're able to. So is there something underlying that headache? Is it a hormonal imbalance? Is it a food you're eating, food allergies? Is it something going on in your digestive tract? Is it structural? Do you sit at a computer all day like this? Is it tension? Do we need to refer you out or suggest that maybe you should go to chiropractor or physical therapy or acupuncture or something else? But in the meantime, if that is stress, we want to help your stress maybe with herbs and nutrition and meditation and different natural therapies. So we are looking at treating the whole person, finding identifying and treating the underlying cause if possible. What else is so special about naturopathic medicine? Well, we like to do a lot of teaching, education. So the word doctor comes from docere, which means to teach. And yeah, I'm kind of a Latin nerd, but I like that because it's really quite a very it's an important role. Let's put it that way. because, we're a team. We're a team. You know your body better than I do, right? So you can help me to help you if you tell me what's going on. You tell me what works with you, what doesn't work with you. So that's naturopathic medicine in a nutshell, or the very big nut that I unpacked there. And just a little aside here, if you do have questions, I'd ask that you hold them to the end. So I'll get through try to get through this whole presentation here in a decent amount of time to get you home early enough. But if you do have questions like, can you repeat that? I tend to talk a little fast. I apologize. I will try to slow it down. So if you need me to repeat something or clarify something, of course you can stop me. But so when we're talking about finding the underlying cause, so instead of saying that with that headache, instead of saying, gee, can I take an herbal aspirin instead of an aspirin or another type of anti-inflammatory? Again, we want to find what's going on underneath. And that brings us to inflammation, which is our topic tonight. And so it's really become quite a big issue these days because it's, the slide you can't see had a cover of Time magazine back in 2004. So it's been around for a while that it's been percolating, let's say it that way. But since about 2004, that the Time magazine cover was that inflammation is the secret killer. That's what they had, the secret killer. Is it the underlying cause of heart disease and Alzheimer's and cancers and things like that? So we really want to look at is that possible? And they are finding that really is very, very much a pervasive thing. So that's why we want to look at acute inflammation and then, of course, chronic inflammation. That's where the danger, is mostly. But some of the research, and I'm going to need my glasses because I can't read these anymore. Some of the research out there, and again, this is in your handouts as well. It's tiny, but it's in there. I found it interesting. This was just from one journal that I use, the NDNR, Naturopathic Doctors Resource News, I believe is what it is. But there were some interesting topics here. It makes you think, wow, inflammation is involved in so much. The molecular link between insulin resistance and inflammation. Insulin resistance is a blood sugar disorder, right? Addressing brain inflammation may improve OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder symptoms. So brain inflammation, better sleep and Tai Chi reduce inflammation and improve health. It's good to know. So sleep is connected to inflammation. Neuroinflammation and Lyme disease. Okay, so we're talking again, brain inflammation and Lyme disease. Wow, what's going on here? Acupuncture to reduce pain and inflammation. Good to know. A non-medical, a non-prescription drug might help. Autoimmune disease and the gut, how intestinal inflammation contributes to autoimmune disease. Wow, that's autoimmune disease? You mean doesn't necessarily mean it's a genetic thing? We'll talk about that. And then chronic inflammation, the hallmark of aging. So we're seeing that this is, again, quite pervasive. So when we want to think about inflammation, we want to say, well, what is inflammation? What are we talking about? It sounds like inflammation. There's a flame going on inside, right? So anytime I talk about inflammation, we want to think of anything that has itis after it. If you have arthritis, that's inflammation of the joints. Conjunctivitis, inflammation of the conjunctiva. You can have gastritis, you can have pancreatitis, encephalitis, endocarditis. Anything can have an itis. Anything can become inflamed. Right, so that kind of tells you how pervasive that is. So we want to think, though, it's actually a natural defensive response that the body has to stress or trauma and cell damage. So it's actually a good thing in small doses. The beautiful thing about the body is that it wants to be well. It's always looking for homeostasis. It's always looking to be in balance. And so the body has these systems in place, the immune system and the nervous system, all these things that are going to try to keep us balanced as much as it can. None of us is really always here. We always teeter one way or the other, just because of the environment and all that. But we'll talk about that sort of thing. So we want to talk first about acute inflammation, because that's usually where it starts, right? Acute inflammation, it's just a sudden onset sort of thing. It can be caused by physical trauma. You get punched, or you get a splinter, which we'll show you on one of the slides there. It can be caused by physical trauma, infection, microbes, little fungus or bacteria or virus that get into any type of a cut or a wound. And even chemical agents, so different pesticides and herbicides and all the dry cleaning chemicals, anything that really gets into your system, any type of chemical agent, detergents and things like that. But as I said, it's a necessary process that helps the body to do things like dispose of the invading toxins and dispose of those microbes. Again, it's looking to protect us. It is also looking to prevent the spread of those organisms to other parts of the body. So it's trying to, sequester it, right? And then it's also preparing the site for repair and restoration. So if you look at that next slide, not that I'm getting into the next slide with the acute inflammatory response. I just wanted to show that to you so you could just kind of see what it is that's going on. It's, I think, what are we up to? I think we're up to slide 5. My page 2 or 3.
It's on page 2.
Yeah, page 2, first slide there. So just to show you a little bit, that's like a little splinter that's going into your skin. That's trauma, right? So what's on that splinter, we don't know. Could be bugs, could be insects. We don't know what's on there. So that goes into your system, and your body is already alerted. Wow, we need to do something about this. That's an invader. So the body's always looking for things that are not self. Right? We don't attack ourselves normally, right? Our cells get along very well with each other for the most part, unless there's an autoimmune disorder, which we'll talk about a bit later. That's when the self attacks itself. Autoimmune, right? It attacks itself. But normally, the body is looking for, scavenging for different invaders and things, anything that's out of the norm that says, hey, it's not supposed to be here. So you get that invader, the cells start coming and releasing chemical messengers, and the capillaries get leaky, and they release again more different cells called phagocytes that engulf the microbes and things. Like I say, I'm not going to get too into the biochemistry and physiology of it, but it's really cool. So it helps to know that all this stuff is going on while we don't even know what's going on. We get a cut or something. Okay, we put a little Neosporin or a Band-Aid and we forget about it. But underneath, what's going on? There's all this wonderful immune system of ours that's trying to be balanced, right? It's trying to help push away those bacteria and the toxins or whatever it is and get us back balanced. So that's what happens. Now, the common signs and symptoms of an inflammatory or acute inflammatory response are things like pain, redness, heat, swelling, and sometimes loss of function. And as I told you, I'm kind of a fiend for Latin. I had to put those there. This is how I learned them. Pain is dolor, redness is rubor, heat is calor, and swelling is tumor. And loss of function, I don't know if there's a Latin term, it might be no motor. I have no idea, I'm just making this up. But so those sorts of things you look for when you think, oh, is there inflammation going on under there, right? So the next slide is one you don't have, but I did, again, it would have sucked up too much ink and you wouldn't see anything. But it was just explaining chronic inflammation, which I did elaborate on the next page. All the different, like what happens? What is it about inflammation that's so bothersome to us? So where the problem is lying is not so much in the acute inflammation that happens. The body gets hurt, it fixes itself usually. So what happens? These causes of chronic inflammation. And this is the slide that you do have, and it is all the things that were on the slide that you don't. So I just put it in a better way. So what is going to cause this chronic inflammation? What's causing our bodies to not get better and to just keep getting inflamed? So acute episodes that don't resolve, they never really fully clear. Or as I like to say, it's like a grain of sand in your shorts. It's just irritating enough that it's not going away, but it's just there, and it's causing enough so that your body is still saying, hey, get away, get away from me, right? So that kind of thing. So an acute episode that doesn't clear. Too many omega-6 oil foods. So now omega-6, you've probably heard of essential fatty acids, right? The good fats that we need. You all need good fats, good sugars, good proteins. So there are all kinds of different omega-3, omega-6, omega-9 fatty acids. Our diet, the standard American diet, tends to be a little heavy in the omega-6s. You find them a lot in processed foods or other types of foods that we'll talk about, the cakes and pastries and margarines and things like that, so not so good. But there are some good ones, and we'll talk about that too. But so, to cause chronic inflammation, because as I mentioned, the body is always looking for balance, and what happens is the body has a mechanism for becoming inflamed, and it has a mechanism to be deflamed, I guess might be the word. So it's always, again, trying to, when there's inflammation, it will react to deflame, to cool that flame. So again, we're trying to do this, but what happens is we can either feed the inflammatory pathway, or we can feed the anti-inflammatory pathway. We want to feed the anti-inflammatory pathway as much as we can. Now, and that's not just with food, it's with lifestyle and other things too, which we'll talk about. So one of the things, again, that causes the chronic inflammation is too many of these essential fatty acids that are omega-6 as opposed to omega-3. The omega-3s tend to be much healthier for you. You find them in nuts and seeds and fish and things like that. Again, our diet tends to be heavier in the 6s, not so heavy in the 3s, so we want to balance that and change that. We'll talk about that. But that can cause inflammation. I thought it was interesting to find that high-intensity training, exercising, can be too much exercise. Yes, I'm telling you, you can exercise too much. But my naturopath said, don't exercise. No, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying don't over-exercise. The high-intensity training with that, and I'm not trying to put down any particular form of exercise, but CrossFit comes to mind. I think it's a good form of exercise, and anyone out there can certainly challenge me on this. I think it's a good form of exercise. I think what happens is some folks tend to overtrain. What they do is that high-intensity interval training. So it's the theory of you exercise, you push yourself, push until you can't push no more, and then you rest until you can exercise again. So it's this constant push. Again, I think in moderation, I think it's great. So again, moderation, right? So I think it's when the high-intensity training is overtraining, when you're doing too much, because it causes stress on the body, right? And stress, we'll find out, is inflammatory. Anytime you put stress on the body, or you're over-exercising, even overeating, it can be oxidizing. So what does that mean, oxidizing? Well, if we look at the next part of that, we've got free radical damage. So what happens with that, when I think of oxidizing, I think of rust, right? You think of, well, we can kind of rust when these cells that we're looking at, you've got these healthy molecules, the healthy atoms, they're stable, they're all happy and stable. Then you have these things called free radicals, and they're missing something. They're not playing with a full deck, so they're missing something there, and they're looking for it. So they're scavenging. They're looking around to the healthy cells to feed them, to fulfill them, right? So they're unstable molecules, right? They're a little tapped in the head. So they're looking around to steal from the healthy molecules. As they're doing that, they're damaging cells and proteins and fats, and they're damaging DNA. So we don't want them around. We don't want them around. So we think of this as oxidation in a way. So what would we need to help prevent that is antioxidants, right? You've got oxidation, again, balance. There's a thing that helps it called antioxidants. Then that antioxidant, I like the picture there. It's very cute, where the little antioxidant is handing the little free radical a little molecule and saying, here, don't be a pain in the butt anymore. Here, get away from the healthy cells. So it's very important to have those. And we find antioxidants in nature, in our foods, things like fruits and vegetables that have what are called bioflavonoids. That's what gives them their color. All the purples and reds, they tell you to eat more purples and reds and greens and things. So those are going to give you the antioxidants, among other things, again, we'll talk about later. I guess you can't wait till later. I'm going to talk about all this stuff later. But I want to just kind of get this stuff out of the way so we can get to what do we do, right? So other causes of chronic inflammation, I'm not done yet. There's still other things that can cause chronic inflammation. It's like, just sit there and you'll be fine, right? No. High blood sugar levels can also cause inflammation, so that's why diabetes is often linked to, or I should say inflammation is linked with diabetes, because it's an underlying cause. They kind of work together, where you can get retinopathy, nephropathy. You get other end organ damage. It's not just, my sugar's too high. There's it's not good. It's not good to have high sugar. It's also not good to have high insulin. So again, insulin's a good thing. When you're diabetic, sometimes you need that insulin to help put the sugar, bring the sugar down, put it where it needs to go. But too much insulin can be too much too. It's actually inflammatory to blood vessels. Imagine that. So again, what do we do, right? So we'll talk about that. Excess body fat and lack of exercise can actually be quite inflammatory as well. All that excess fat, excess sugar. So these things we can see are detrimental to the body, lack of exercise. So we just talked about saying too much exercise isn't good. Right? Well, lack of exercise not so good either, right? Environmental pollutants, it's kind of a no-brainer. It causes those free radicals. We talked about the free radical damage. It causes damage to DNA and to our cells and things. So environmental pollutants like, well, again, pesticides and herbicides and things that are on our food and chemical dry cleaning agents and all that sort of thing. So they're kind of everywhere, right? I know I'm bumming you out. Here's something that's fun. I'm sure you're going to want to hear this one, is high temperature grilling and frying. So, you're talking about my summer barbecue. I love to grill, right? When you put food on the grill, what's happening is it's causing what are called AGEs, AGES, and it's on there too, but they're advanced glycation end products. Essentially, when you think of glycation, you think of sugar. So it's sugar reacting with protein. See, sugar, it's not so great, right? Not so great. So, and it's causing, again, some inflammation and damage. We have them normal. We have these AGEs normally in our bodies, and normally they come in food. It's in certain foods as well. But what we want to do is not have so much. And one of the things is frying and grilling tends to promote that. Grilling, when you char your meats and things, it denatures the proteins. It's not so great. You don't want to eat the charred stuff. Don't eat the charred stuff. I know that's like the best part, right? But you don't want to eat it. I know. It's like, you love your burnt piece of chicken, but you don't want to eat that. So, but what was interesting is that there was a study that showed that marinating meats in either vinegar or lemon juice, and I've even heard wine. So, but make it organic. So, marinating your meats in vinegar or lemon juice for like an hour before you grill actually decreases the amount of those AGEs by almost half. So, wow, it's great to know that we can do something like that. So have your grilled meats just be, again, moderation, and try to do some things to offset that, So, yeah, so when we think about this, so what happens with chronic inflammation? All these things that can cause chronic inflammation. So what's the big deal, right? What is it that it's, why should I be concerned? Well, it's being linked to so many different illnesses and conditions now, things like cancer, which makes sense, pulmonary diseases, so respiratory things, neurological diseases, Alzheimer's, arthritis, which we kind of figured, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and which one did I miss? Autoimmune diseases. So we don't want that to happen. We don't want this chronic inflammation to sort of percolate and cause potential damage down the road. It just, again, like a grain of sand in your shorts, it's just this chronic inflammation, chronic thing. So where does it begin? All right, this chronic inflammation. We said, there's pollutants and this and that sort of thing. So, but what is it doing in our bodies? What is it causing? Where is it disrupting? Well, there's a couple of places they're thinking, is that many people believe that inflammation starts in the gut or in the digestive tract, right? Poor diet, like we talked about, the blood sugar excess fats, the wrong fats, grilling and frying meats and things. You are what you eat, right? You are what you eat. And anytime you garbage in, garbage out, right? So whatever you're putting in here, you want to get out. You don't want to get garbage out. In other words, you want to be healthy. You want to be able to think like I'm not doing right now. So we think of the poor diet, but also maybe you've heard of intestinal permeability or leaky gut. You probably have heard, maybe you've heard of that. What that actually means is, and I don't have a graphic for this anyway, so I'm going to use my hands like my puppet show. This is what I usually do. The digestive tract is essentially lined. It has a nice lining, right, in the digestive tract, nice mucosal lining. Well, there's little tiny holes that things can get through. Nutrients get absorbed. That's great. They're little junctions like that. That's fine. They're tight junctions. But when this leakiness happens. What happens is when inflammation, whether it's through because of allergies or medications or stress or whatever, those tight junctions are no longer tight, and you can see there are larger holes in that lining. So now things are getting through that shouldn't get through, right? And what is the body going to do? It's looking for things that are not self. It's scavenging for things that, hey, this shouldn't be there. A good example is the protein in certain foods, wheat, and barley, rye, and spelt. You've probably heard of gluten. People that have gluten sensitivities. Gluten is a very large protein, and it tends to get through. When it gets through, it's got a nice large hole to get through now. It's getting through, and the body is saying, "Whoa, we don't like this protein. We want to get rid of it. We have to attack it." So it's going to cause an inflammatory response in a effort to help fix it, right? But what happens is then we end up getting more allergies and more inflammation. So it's kind of this perpetual cycle that happens. So we need to heal that up in order to decrease the inflammation. You always want to remove the cause and then heal that up, right? So you want to remove the cause. Because if you don't remove the cause, you're still eating the same things that are causing inflammation. It's not going to go away. And just taking medications, they're not always going to fix the problem. You have to remove the cause, right? We have to remove what's causing what's preventing cure. That's what naturopathic medicine likes to do too, is we like to remove the cause. So these things that are going through that shouldn't be there. And even another thing I should let you know about is dairy. I know dairy gets a bad rap, right? A lot of people say, oh, cow's milk, dairy. Casein is the protein that's in one of the proteins that's in dairy products, and that also is a large molecule, and that tends to get through. And a lot of people have allergies to gluten but to casein. So oftentimes, a little side here, and I wonder if this is part of the neuroinflammation part, but we will take kids who have ADD, ADHD, hyperactivity disorders, take them off of wheat and dairy, and they usually do much better. Oftentimes they'll do much better because those proteins actually bind to opiate receptors in the brain. And what do opiates do? They cause, impulsivity, and they cause you to be, really restless and all that sort of thing. So you remove those, and it can often help. So if you have, children, grandchildren, friends that are a little hyperactive, check their diet. Check the diet. But that can work the same for adults too. It's not just with kids. Kids, I think, are just a little bit more vulnerable. But so the gut is one issue. Genes or genetics, we think, are we really a slave to our genes anymore? And there's this, there's a whole field of epigenetics and genomics. They're really talking more about we don't have to be a slave to our genes. Just because grandmother, my grandfather, my mother, my sister, everybody has autoimmune issue, autoimmune thyroid issue, or this particular autoimmune issue, genetic, hereditary issue, doesn't mean I'm destined to get it. You might be predisposed, but they're finding that a lot of this is due to diet and lifestyle factors like stress and sleep and exercise. I think this is good news. I think it's like, wow, that's really interesting, because even back when I was in school, we knew about autoimmune diseases, of course, but it was just like, oh, well, you can't do anything about your genes. You can't fix your heredity, right? But now they're saying, maybe we can. Maybe there are some things to at least improve it. Improve your chances. So I think that's a great find in the research these days. And another avenue besides the gut and genetics is the central nervous system. So another whole field called psychoneuroimmunology or neuroimmunology. We're talking about the brain chemical imbalances and how those brain chemicals, things like serotonin and dopamine and GABA and histamine, which I'm sure you've heard of histamine for allergies and things, and glutamate and norepinephrine, or adrenaline, another word for adrenaline. So these things that are these brain chemicals are actually, they can be inflammatory as well. So, and the gut and the brain are so intimately connected, they're finding. Serotonin receptors in the gut. What? Serotonin, doesn't that have something to do with headaches and with depression? Yeah. So again, that connection, I just find it so fascinating how connected the body is, how it all is connected, right? So where does it begin? right? That's what we were looking at. So where does it end? Now that I actually, like I said, bummed you out, you can't eat, you got to exercise but not too much, eat this but don't eat too much of that. Where does it end? What do we do? Well, I had this cute little slide. I'm sorry you can't see it, but I'll describe it to you. There's these two pigeons. One is thin, one is rather obese with a French fry in his mouth in a McDonald's parking lot. And the thin pigeon says to the pudgy pigeon, you got to start eating out of a different parking lot. So that's what we have to think. If you want to come up and see it later, you're welcome to. But it's true. We really got to start eating out of a different parking lot. You know, when you think about it, we have choices in life, right? You know, you've perhaps heard scripture. I put before you life and death, choose life. Okay, you've got the multiple choice question answer right there. Well, I'm adding to that, if I may. I put before you health and disease. Choose health, because it is a choice, right? We have options here. We can choose if we're going to have a donut in the morning, or we can choose if we're going to have some oatmeal. You know, we might want the donut. Is it the best? But what are we going to do? So what are we going to do with all this information I've just given you, just downloaded on you to bum you out for the night? We talked about exercise. Not too much, not too little, but exercise, doing more of it, more vigorously, and throughout the day. What does that mean? So it's interesting when I'm always, you know, listening to different lectures and things, of course, on different stuff that's out there. And one of my colleagues is a naturopath who worked at the Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and so she has worked extensively with cancer patients and things. And she said, and I thought this was really interesting, she said, you know, of all the tools in my tool belt, whether it's exercise, diet, sleep, supplements, the one thing I would choose if I had only one is exercise. I was floored, because I thought, wow, really, of everything that you have available, exercise is the one thing you would choose to decrease risk and prevent recurrence of cancers in particular. But she was also saying that exercise is one of the things that helps to decrease what's called all-cause mortality, meaning your risk of dying from anything, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, blah, blah, blah. Exercise is protective for most everything, which is really good to know. So when we talk about exercise, how much, what do we have to do? Do you have to go to the gym 2 hours a day and burn, get on the treadmill for 2 hours? No, what they're finding is, at least in this instance, for good general health, is a brisk walk 30 minutes a day, at least 5 days a week. If you can do more, that's great. But 30 minutes, not too bad. Can we fit that into our schedule? Yeah, we probably fit more time on Facebook or on our phones and things, so we can probably take that time for ourselves to be healthy. But when you do that, for every 5 minutes of a brisk walk, do 1 minute of vigorous. So again, that's where we're getting kind of that high intensity interval piece in there a little bit. So you're exercising as much as you can, but then for a minute, just go even more. Push yourself a little bit, just for a minute, and then come back down and just get back to a brisk walk. Now, a brisk walk is where you can sort of still talk, but you're out of breath a little bit, but you can still talk, so you're not so winded. So think about that. I think that's a doable thing. Most of us don't have time to maybe get on the treadmill or whatever, or go to the gym for a couple of hours or something, but 30 minutes a day, not too bad. And if you're sedentary for most of the day, say you're at a desk, like I am, usually at a desk for 90 minutes or more. If you're at a desk for 90 minutes or more, get up every 90 minutes and do something. Just walk around, do some stretching, do some other things too. So exercise, very important to decrease inflammation. Sleep is actually very important too, and we don't realize how I see a lot of folks that just don't sleep well. We need more sleep and or better sleep. Some people say, I fall asleep fine, but then I'm awake 20 times, or it's restless, or I can't fall asleep because my mind is going. That happens a lot too. So how do we get more and better sleep? We should get 7 to 8 hours is ideal, and they've actually found that getting less than that, getting like 5 to 6 hours or in that range or lower, is actually not so great for the memory. As you can tell, I get less than 5 hours of sleep sometimes. It's not so great for the memory, but it's also not so great for inflammation and just all cause of
Doesn't meditation help?
meditation. Yep, that was one of the things I was actually going to mention. Is that so? How do we get better sleep? And it does depend on the cause, because it could be that, are you exercising late at night? Well, maybe you're pumping your adrenal glands. Your adrenaline is too much. So move your exercise regimen to the morning or to earlier in the day. But you can do things like meditation, certainly, prayer, whatever it is that relaxes your mind and clears your mind. Certain supplements can help, like magnesium or calcium. They're very calming and relaxing. Essential oils help some folks, like lavender. And there are others. Herbal teas can help, like chamomile or lemon balm. And meditation and prayer and things. So there are different ways to help your sleep, but again, it's trying to find the underlying cause of why you're not sleeping. And is it in the when you first go to sleep, you fall asleep fine and you wake up, or you're not falling asleep and then you fall asleep and you're waking up to it, whatever it is. If you can't stay asleep or something, melatonin can certainly help. There are herbs, valerian and things like that. But depending on what the cause is, you can treat it better if you know, rather than, again, just taking an over-the-counter sleep medication, because we don't know. Is that addressing the cause? So other things, and now diet and nutrition. We talked about some of that before, but so what's considered the ideal diet? Is there really an ideal diet? One of the things we hear all the time, more plant-based, vegetables and fruits. This is kind of a no-brainer, I'm telling you, I'm sure. Low sugar, low carbohydrates, and we're talking about sugars more like the simple sugars, the ones found in processed foods, because they're simple because they burn quickly and they spike up your blood sugar and they come crashing down. That's the problem. Whereas the complex carbohydrates or the complex sugars, they burn more slowly and your body can handle them a bit better. And you find those in good fiber-rich foods and things like that. So sugar gets a bad rap sometimes. You just want the good sugars. And then we're talking about fats, good sugars, good fats. So the more omega-3 fats, things like fish, cold water fish, wild caught. Try not to get the warmer water, farm raised. You want to avoid that as much as you can, because the warmer water, one of the things is, the benefits of the cold water is that, think of this, the oils, right? Oil rancidifies when it's heated. Right, it gets rancid. Right? So if a cold water fish is in cold water, their oils are nice and cold. They're not rancid. But if they're now in warmer waters, that's in a farm raised, if the water temperature is just a bit higher than what they should be living in, you're going to find that the oils could potentially be maybe a bit rancid, possibly. So you don't want the farm raised. That was what I was taught years ago. It made sense to me. So nuts and seeds, this is where else you're going to get your omega-3s, the nuts and seeds. Raw and unsalted is going to be best. Again, because when you take, you roast the nuts, you're adding heat, right? Heat is going to tend to rancidify them just a wee bit more. And sometimes you can open a package of nuts that's been roasted. You can smell if oil is rancid. You can smell if it's been there for a while. So some of these trail mixes and stuff, you're better off making your own with raw nuts. You can throw a few salted ones in there just for some variety, but if you can use raw, that's much better. So more omega-3s, less omega-6s. Now again, the omega-6s, we talked about it from animal products, pork, beef, some dairy things, processed foods like mayonnaise and cookies and chips, muffins and things like that. That's where you find a lot of those. But the good omega-3s, there are some in nuts and seeds. And they even found that borage oil, a study I just alluded to here, was that borage oil actually was found to help with rheumatoid arthritis. That's what RA is. So again, not all omega-6 fats are bad. You want to choose the right ones and just get it balanced a bit more. So
What's borage oil?
Borage oil is borage seed.
Oh, it's a seed?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's a seed. Yeah. I'm trying to think now. I'm thinking like flaxseed, borage, evening primrose. A lot of these are from flowers or seeds. Yeah. I could be wrong on that.
Look it up.
I will. I'll have to look. So diet and nutrition continued. Again, is there an ideal diet? The Mediterranean diet has always been kind of a tried and true healthful diet, and that's again a lot of vegetables, fruits, beans, whole grains, lean meats and dairy products. Makes sense, right? The Mediterranean folks, they seem to be a healthy, hearty lot. And so that is, again, has been shown to be a helper of all-cause mortality. In other words, it decreases the risk for so many different health issues when folks eat this diet. Yes?
I had a high school biology teacher that maintained, like in warmer countries like Central America
Yeah.
or the Mediterranean, eat hot foods, and the hot foods themselves help to protect our gut.
You know, and I think it depends on the region too.
Yeah.
Like, we probably wouldn't do well with that, you know?
Yeah, but we're from a different region.
Right,
Because-
right,
because
yeah.
the region,
It's very
they seem to
interesting.
eat hotter foods.
Yep, yep.
And that in itself helps them.
Yeah, and that's true. So,
Right.
and that kind of brings me to the next point. Thank you for the segue, ma'am. You're not a plant in the audience here. But no, that brings me to what's called the Paleo Diet or Paleolithic diet, eating the way our ancestors did. You know, so that's something that's kind of I don't want to call it a fad, but that's kind of a newer thing that's been around for a while. And it does have some merit to it. They emphasize whole foods, fiber-rich vegetables, you know, wild-caught seafood, coconut oil, lean meats and things. But they tend to be a little heavier on protein, heavier on the good carbs, or, you know, and not so much on the sugars and other carbs. Like, they don't really suggest legumes or beans and cereal grains and things. So this can be a little hard for some folks, not to have any beans. And so I go back and forth with, it sounds like a really good thing, but I don't know if I could do it, to be honest, for long term. But there are a couple of links on your handout to check out the Paleo Diet, and just check out like what to eat, what not to eat. You know, it's kind of a neat little graphic they have, what you can eat and what you can't eat. So it's worth checking, because it is considered very anti-inflammatory, and it does seem to help a lot of folks. A lot of folks have really felt better on it. Just in my experience, a lot of folks haven't been able to sustain that type of diet. Might be worth looking into. I mean, I think if you were really sick, you might say, yeah, I'm going to do whatever it takes. So it's worth looking into. So another thing, when we're talking about diet, nutrition, and all that, think about your cooking style. You know, to decrease those ages, those glycosylated end products we talk about, you know, rancidifying and denaturing the proteins. Think about doing lower heat things. So more raw, boiled, poached, and stewed meats and foods and things. Maybe not so much the meats, but and less fried, grilled, and roasted, because that will decrease the amount of heat that's in the food. And the Paleo Diet does talk a lot about that, about doing less of that. So it does have a lot of good qualities to it, virtues to that particular one. So that brings me to some supplements. Now, I always remind people that supplements are just that. They're to supplement a healthy diet, not to substitute for a healthy diet. So find a diet that works well for you, like we talked about, emphasizing, you know, vegetables and fruits and nuts and seeds and things, and good oils and good fats and such. But, you know, if you need to supplement, because a lot of us do, you know, maybe we can't get enough fish. Maybe you don't like fish. So doing essential fatty acids like fish or cod liver oil, those are great for the brain, they're anti-inflammatory, they're good for the immune system, very good for our purposes here today. Good for everything, good for what ails you, I think. They're also, we mentioned the borage oil, evening primrose oil, good for hot flashes, so it's good for so many things. And coconut oil is also good too. That tends to get a bad rap, but it tends to be a very actually good, healthful oil. Some other things you might consider is bromelain. Now you can get that in a capsule, but bromelain is actually a constituent from pineapple, and it helps to. That's why I love some like Chinese food restaurants, and some restaurants will give you some pineapple at the end of the meal. I think they're helping you to digest your food. So what happens is this bromelain has properties to break down proteins. If you eat it with your meal, it will break down your food proteins. But if you take it away from meals, it can break up the inflammatory proteins. So it's actually quite nice to use it either way. So, you know, if you take it, like I say, between your meals and you've got inflammation, it's great for inflammation and pain and things like that. Same with turmeric or curcumin. You know, that's kind of, it's a spice, an Indian spice you see a lot of in Indian foods and things. And you can use that for, in foods, you can use it in beverages. Some folks, I know Indian folks have used it like in milk or in coconut milk. You know, and they drink it, they make a beverage out of it. I haven't tried that yet, some like it. Some of my patients have said, not so much. But that's why you can get capsules if you like as well. But you do need a little bit of black pepper, because turmeric doesn't absorb very well. So if you're going to buy a supplement, make sure it's not just turmeric or curcumin. Make sure it has some black pepper or piperine, it might say in there, bioperine or something, it'll say pepper in there. It might have 5 milligrams or something, just enough to, what it does is it kind of irritates the stomach lining just a bit, not in a bad way, irritates the stomach lining a bit to allow that, the curcuminoids to be absorbed and things. So kind of an important thing. So that's why, when some folks take supplements, they say, oh, this stuff doesn't work. You might not be taking the right one, or you might not be taking the right form or the right kind. So it's very important to get good quality stuff. Not just something, at a supermarket. Oh, this is cheap. Oh, I can get 3 for free. We got to be careful of that. There's a reason for that, potentially. But turmeric is a wonderful herb for it's antioxidant. As we mentioned, antioxidant. It helps with prevent Alzheimer's. It helps. They're finding that it's cancer preventive. It's anti-cancer. It's anti-inflammatory. So it's really one of those that's a good all-over herb, or spice, I should say. Ginger is another nice anti-inflammatory, and you can eat this stuff too. That's the thing, is you don't have to take a billion supplements if you don't want, but you can add these things to your diet. Some vitamins and minerals that you might not know are anti-inflammatory, but things like zinc and vitamin C, vitamin E, magnesium, and copper, even manganese. So a lot of these vitamins and minerals, that's why it's good to get a really well-balanced diet so you can get these things. Because a lot of these nutrients are in either a multivitamin, but they're also in good whole foods. It's all put in there. The antioxidants we had talked about, I alluded to and back. Think of your ACEs, vitamins A, C, E, and selenium. Those are some good standard antioxidant supplements, but also there's one called NAC, which is N-acetylcysteine. Excellent for the liver, excellent for, it's just really one of the really potent antioxidant, as is alpha-lipoic acid, or ALA, alpha-lipoic acid. Alpha-lipoic acid also helps with blood sugar regulation as well. So they're multi-purpose, that's the thing, they're multi-purpose.
What foods are they in?
The foods, that's a good question. I don't have the answer to that.
Must come from some food initially.
One would think that it would come from some kind of food, but I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to look that up. That and borage oil.
And also, did a lot of information come out of the Indian culture?
Oh, I think
There's a lot of ancient writings about foods that help various skin problems, stomach problems.
Yep. Now you're talking, there's Native American, but also Indian culture and Indian.
Yeah.
Yep, and also the Ayurvedic.
Too, but
Yep.
Talking about the ancient India.
Ancient India. Yep, and Ayurvedic medicine is huge.
Yes.
It's great for. They have all kinds of different. They go by your heat, what kind of body type you are. So there's so much you can get into with this,
Yeah.
And then there's another one that we don't hear about too much. One last supplement there. It's called serapeptidase or serapeptase, and it's actually from silkworm. Oh, vegetarians or vegans may not like it, but you can actually get that in supplement form as well, and that it helps to break down like blood clots and things like that. So it's a very good breaker downer. A note though, caution on any of these things here, they can be blood thinning. So if you're on blood thinners, you have to be careful. Any of these things, vitamin E, garlic, turmeric, all these things can tend to thin your blood, even fish oils and things. So you do have to be careful if you're on blood thinning medication. That's why it's important to check your medications with your supplements, because there are interactions.
CoQ10. What is that?
CoQ10, coenzyme Q10. It's called ubiquinone. It's a nutrient that we have in our bodies that we need. It helps. Trying to think. It's all the biochemistry is going through my brain. Think of it this way: when we have a statin medication, when you take a cholesterol medication, right?
Yeah.
Cholesterol is made in a series or in a pathway. Nothing just comes out already done. Usually there's a cascade. So cholesterol, when it's getting made, CoQ10 is in there somewhere. So you need when the I'm trying to think, the Lipitor or the statin medication, it blocks that pathway and it blocks the coenzyme Q10. So you need that CoQ10, because that CoQ10 is a nutrient that's for energy. So oftentimes folks will get like muscle weakness and things when they're taking those statin medications. The CoQ10 can sometimes help offset that, because the body now has that. Does that make sense?
It does,
So yeah,
and
it's
I take
interesting.
CoQ10 to offset the statin.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm not sure what it is or why it is.
Yeah, well, it's an
I know that
antioxidant.
people didn't
Essentially,
use it before,
no,
sort
no.
of our
Well, it's probably
slot.
yeah, it's probably in certain again in foods that I don't have off the top of my head. I'm sure it's there somewhere, but yeah, it is something that's necessary if you're taking a statin medication because it gets blocked in that cascade, and we need it.
Yes.
So, and again, you have to be careful of the medication, other medications you're on as well, because that can interfere with certain things. So, yeah. So, the last thing we want to talk about, not the least, but the last thing we want to talk about what to do is stress management for inflammation. Who would think, right, that stress is actually inflammatory? But when we look at one of the main hormones in the body, cortisol, maybe you've heard of it. You hear of it as the belly fat hormone. We hear, oh, too much cortisol. You stress the belly fat hormone. That's where all the belly fat ends up because that's where cortisol makes you store your fat when you're under stress. But it's actually a natural part of our hormone system. They're anti-inflammatory. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. It's a natural stress hormone. We need it. Just like we need adrenaline. The epinephrine, norepinephrine. Those fight or flight response. Right. That's kind of our fight or flight when we have, we're faced with a stressor. We got to either just stand there and fight it or run like crazy, right? That fight or flight. Cortisol is a little more long term. It has this rhythm to it. It rises in the morning to help us wake up, and it comes down at night to help us sleep, right? So there's this wonderful pattern to cortisol, and again, it's a stress, considered a stress hormone. The other hormone that goes with it is called DHEA, and I can do a whole talk on stress hormones and things, but DHEA is another hormone that kind of buffers the effects of stress. So they work together. Again, the body's always looking for balance, right? So things can get out of whack. When cortisol is flowing naturally, to help us wake up, or in times of stress, we need it, should come back down. Oftentimes it doesn't, and we get excessive cortisol. We get too much. Your adrenal glands. Did I mention that they come out of the adrenal glands? I don't know if I did, but those are your stress handling glands, and they pump out the cortisol, the DHEA, the adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine. They pump out these stress hormones that help us to deal with stress, so that when we are faced with it, we can do whatever we need to. Again, in the old days it was a saber-toothed tiger. Nowadays it's traffic, the spouse, the kids, the boss, whatever, financial things. We're always being bombarded with stress. So the body needs the natural anti-inflammatory, but when it's excessive, like I say, it can contribute to inflammation, thyroid dysfunction, poor immune health, poor gut health, and even bone loss, among other things. Because when you think about when you have inflammation in your body, right, you got a joint or something going on, the doctor might give you a cortisone shot, right, or you have to take prednisone, like those things. Those are cortisol derivatives, prednisone, cortisone. Those are anti-inflammatories that the body is given in times of need, when your body's probably not making enough to decrease the inflammation. And they work really well. Cortisone, they work really well. Prednisone, they work really well. But you don't want to be on them for too long if you don't have to be. Because again, in excess, it can cause inflammation and things. And it can also cause some bone loss. Cortisol is, what do we want to call it? A catabolic hormone. It breaks things down like bone. So if you have too much stress in your body, can cause your bones to break down, right? We think, gee, what's with the osteoporosis? Why am my bones thinning? Or osteopenia, why are my bones thinning? Do you have a lot of stress in your life? Think about that, because it could be that your cortisol has been so high. What we like DHEA for, kind of a natural anti-inflammatory in some ways, is that it helps to buffer that. It's anabolic, right? From DHEA, we can get testosterone. We think of those anabolic type of steroids. Well, they can be good, again, in moderation. So you've got the cortisol and the DHEA, they balance each other. One gets out of whack, one's too high, one's too low, whatever, you can get these inflammation pathways that happen. So cortisol is a very, I work a lot with folks who have adrenal issues or stress issues, stress-related issues. I always look at that because it's so prevalent. There's so much stress out there. We're always being compromised. So we need to decrease that. When that cortisol gets too high, we need to decrease it. So how do we do that? Well, getting enough sleep is important. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's really to drive the point home, getting enough sleep, getting mild to moderate exercise. Again, not too much. You push yourself. It's stressful on the system if we exercise too much. Meditation can bring that down. Diet, different supplements. There's one called phosphatidylserine. I wrote it down there for you. If you have too much cortisol, it helps to bring that down. And deep breathing. Who'd have thought, but actually in through the nose, out through the mouth, that deep breathing actually releases cortisol from the lungs. Who knew, right? That's kind of interesting. So deep breathing is very relaxing for that reason too. And I'll leave you on this note that feel-good emotions can actually help decrease inflammation. There was a study that showed that feelings of good feelings, especially awe, wonder, and amazement, they actually checked this. I guess they tested it against people who were grumpy, bitter, and disgruntled. I don't know. I don't recall the whole thing. But the study was showing that people that had, a sense of awe and wonder and amazement, they actually found that this particular inflammatory cytokine called interleukin-6, and not to get all medical on you, but that particular inflammatory cytokine or protein was decreased when people who are feeling better. So isn't that just kind of a wonderful thing to know that we have so much power? I think that's kind of the take-home message I want to give you folks today, is that we really have, again, the choice. You can choose health or you can choose disease or illness, just dishealth, unhealth. You have a choice, and every choice you make, from the moment you wake up in the morning, am I going to be happy or sad? Am I going to be joyful? Am I going to just take whatever comes and soldier through? Am I going to have a donut for breakfast? And you probably wouldn't give your dog a donut for breakfast, right? But we eat it. A donut for breakfast, muffins for breakfast. Or am I going to have something healthy like oatmeal or a fruit smoothie? A nice protein shake loaded with kale and nutrients and things. So that's right from when you get up in the morning. Breakfast, lunch. How are you going to go? How are you going to go to work? Are you going to drive angry, or are you going to drive peaceful? We can do this all along the way. We can check ourselves all along the way. What are you going to have for lunch? Oh, gee, the office is going out to lunch. Well, we're going to, I don't know, Chuck E. Cheese or something like that. Well, maybe you can pick the best thing on the menu, right? We don't always have everything at our disposal. We can make better choices. From the minute we wake up in the morning to when you go to bed at night, are you going to be thankful and grateful for what you have? Are you going to look around you as you're driving to work and just be amazed? So I think it's very important. Joy is very important. So diet, lifestyle, exercise, all that stuff is very important, but so is just having a healthy attitude and just a good outlook toward life and saying, I'm going to take on this life and I'm going to be healthy as best I can. Because it's hard to do everything all the time. So you just do the best you can. 80 to 90% of the time, if you can do your diet well, but be happy 100% of the time, that'd be nice. So I've blathered on for long enough. I've probably gone over. But thank you for listening. If you have any questions, by all means, shoot, and I'll see if I can answer them. Yes, you in the back.
Can you tell me what C-reactive protein, the test for that does and what it is?
Yeah, C-reactive protein, it's sometimes they'll use what's called HS-CRP, a high sensitivity C-reactive protein. It's a marker of inflammation, is what it is. So that's actually a good one to, and I'm sorry, I meant to put some labs on here that you could ask for. You can always ask your doctor whether they'll do it or not, I don't know. But you can ask your doctor to, hey, throw in an HS-CRP, C-reactive protein, because that will show what's going on in the body for inflammation. That's one of the more sensitive. They used to use what was called an ESR, an eosinophil, which is a red blood cell, sedimentation rate to see how quickly. They used to use an ESR, but the CRP tends to be much more sensitive. So that's a good one.
Was that with SED rate? Is that what they
SED rate, yeah, the SED
Okay.
rate, they used to call it, excuse me, yes, the eosinophil sedimentation rate, yeah, the SED rate, they used to call it, but the CRP tends to be, yeah, and I believe the HS-CRP, I could be wrong, but I think that one is a little more sensitive even for cardiovascular as well. So the other thing that's interesting to look for when we're talking about blood sugar is what's called the hemoglobin A1C, or glycosylated hemoglobin. Hemoglobin A1C, you'll see HGB1C, I think it is, but you'll see hemoglobin A1C, and that gives us a measure of what your blood sugar is doing over the course of 3 months. So it's not just the glucose, the one, you get your glucose taken. Ask for a hemoglobin A1C, because that's what they actually follow when they're looking for how well you're doing with if you have diabetes. for the kind of marking for that, you know, so, yeah, so that's just another test to throw in there. Yeah. Anything else? Anything else? Yes?
My daughter had asked me questions, so I went on my phone, but I did
Mhm.
find out what foods have an acetylcysteine.
Oh, good, foods. Yeah.
It's cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, kale, bok choy, cress, mustard, of course mustard greens, not the yellow stuff in the
Right.
squirt jar, horseradish. I think that was supposed to say turnip, that's not right.
It
I wrote
could
turnip
be.
tin.
It could be.
Rutabaga and kohlrabi.
Okay, well, you know.
And for the alpha-lipoic
Alpha-lipoic,
acid
yeah.
was spinach, broccoli, carrots, Brussels sprouts, brewer's yeast, tomatoes, peas, beets, and surprisingly, red meat and organ meat.
Yeah, okay. So the thing about the N-acetylcysteine is, and again, not to get all, you know, Bill Nye the Science Guy on you or whatever, but you know, that N-acetylcysteine, it has something to do with sulfur, and a lot of those foods you mentioned, are sulfur. They have to do with sulfur as well. So what does it tell you? It tells you that you need to use common sense when you're eating your greens. I mean, eat a lot of greens, eat a lot of the root vegetables. You know, if you vary your diet, you're going to get a lot of this stuff. That's why I say supplements are to do just that, to supplement a healthy diet. If you can keep a lot of vegetables in your diet, that's kind of the best thing, even more than fruits, more so than fruits, except berries. Berries are really they're very good for you. So berries are very good. They have a lot of antioxidants, a lot of flavonoids and things like that. So vegetables and berries and nuts and stuff are always very good, if you can eat them, if you can tolerate them. You know. But thank you for that. Thanks. I should have done that too. I could have looked up.
Yeah, but you were talking.
I was talking, that's true.
One thing that I have found as a great stress reliever, it didn't fly well here when it was offered here, was laughter yoga.
Oh, really?
Which laughter yoga.
Laughter yoga.
It's based on the belief that our bodies benefit from laughter.
Uh-huh.
And it is yoga because it has the deep breathing
Yeah,
involved. And it's wonderful. And we do silly,
interesting.
childlike activities and fake it till we actually
Till you start laughing.
We end up laughing,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
But it's great. It was
contagious.
started by a physician in Mumbai in 1995, and now it's spread all over the world.
Laughter
So
yoga. That's interesting. And they
there's
do say,
actually a group Wednesday night at the UU Church Center in Franklin if you want to go. Just this Wednesday.
so I'll repeat that for them. There's a laughter yoga
Laughter yoga.
group, and
Yes.
where is that?
It's at the Universalist Center
Oh, at
in
the
Franklin on Chestnut Street.
Oh, Universalist
Wednesday
Center.
night at 7. This Wednesday
This
night.
Wednesday night at
7:30.
7:30. Oh, awesome. Very good, very good.
But-
Laughter is the best medicine, I think. Well, again, it has to go with joy, right? Those good, feel-good emotions and things. I think it's
I
very
do it in
important.
Florida, and it's just, we actually often do it on the beach and into the
Oh,
ocean, so
well,
it's
that's
even
enough.
more
Just going to
so.
the beach is going to be, you know, I don't need the laughter. Well, just sitting on the beach is going to help.
Wait to be there
That's
next Thursday
good. Oh,
night.
good for you, good for you. Great. If there's nothing else, you're free to go. And thank you so much for soaking through it. Appreciate it.